What happens when you take a classic PSP and perform a daring motherboard transplant with a powerful Raspberry Pi compute module? It's a fusion of vintage gaming and cutting-edge technology that will send shivers down your spine. With a dash of creativity and a sprinkling of magic, we're resurrecting this relic to deliver a gaming experience that's not for the faint of heart. So grab your toolbox and prepare to be spellbound as we embark on this hair-raising modding journey together. Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Tito and welcome to a very special Halloween episode of Retro Renew. Today I'm thrilled to show you this really cool project that I've been following, which utilizes the PSP's beautiful design, form factor, and controls, but it integrates a Raspberry Pi into the console, transforming it into a powerful, and more importantly, a very beautiful emulation handheld. I'm not sure if you know this, but I absolutely love the PSP, and it's one of the best looking handhelds to ever grace the earth, hands down. And what I love about this project is that it utilizes the console's robust original hardware components, like the controls and speakers, and combines it with the power and flexibility of the Raspberry Pi. It actually uses a lot of the original PSP hardware, like the button PCBs, the membrane, Wi-Fi antenna, as well as the shell and metal frame. This whole project is completely reversible, and there is no shell trimming or soldering required, which is absolutely fantastic. This is truly a no-cut mod. This project was actually created by an extremely talented modder by the name of Adam, who also goes by the name othermod. Now I'm actually going to quickly turn it over to Adam to talk a bit about himself, as well as his journey in the world of retro game modding.
Thanks for having me on, Tito, and hey everybody, I'm Adam, the face behind othermod. You might know me from a video I released back in August that YouTube basically wouldn't let you avoid. You might have also stumbled across my website or my YouTube channel over the years, where I've been documenting projects off and on, mostly centered around the Raspberry Pi. These projects have always been an obsession of mine, and I just work on them in my free time. This probably doesn't come as a surprise to anyone, but it's just me over here. I do all the coding, PCB design, troubleshooting, and pretty much every step of it is just me tinkering until I have something that I'm happy with. Sometimes that takes a little longer than expected, but I have fun with it, and that's all that matters. I've designed a few boards, but what really put me on the map was the PSPi, and that's the board that lets you use a Raspberry Pi and a PSP shell. And I'll pass it back to Tito to tell you a little more about it.
Thanks, Adam. Now, you all can keep track of all of Adam's work by checking him out on all of his various social media accounts that I've linked down below. Alright, so I'm really excited to tell you all about the PSPi 6, so let's jump right into it. In this video, I'll go over all the parts needed to build your very own PSPi 6, then I'll show you how to put it all together. Go over all of its unique features, review the pros and cons, and of course provide you with my overall thoughts. So at the center of this mod is the PSPi 6 mainboard. This essentially takes the place of the PSP's original motherboard. It shares an almost identical footprint and slots right into the PSP shell using the existing screw posts. This is such an awesome concept, and Adam really pulled it off flawlessly. This here is the headphone board, which again slots right into the PSP shell without modification. It has these pogo pins to make contact with the PSPi mainboard, which is just a brilliant design and further simplifies the installation process. And this here is the Raspberry Pi compute module interface board. This is needed if you decide to go with a CM4 as your Raspberry Pi of choice. Again, this is also compatible with a Pi Zero And if you decide to go that route, an interface board isn't required at all. And speaking of which, you'll of course need a Raspberry Pi. I chose to go with the CM4 since it's more powerful and supports more emulators, but this also works, like I said previously, with a Pi Zero. We also have a thermal pad which helps to dissipate the heat of the CM4 processor and moves it to the PSPi mainboard, and really helps to keep the temps in check. And we have 2 screws to help secure the interface board to the PSPi mainboard. The mod also utilizes a brand new IPS screen which perfectly matches the dimensions of the original screen, but has a much better response rate, color, brightness, and higher resolution. This screen is a huge upgrade to the original PSP screen. And here we have a 2000 mAh lithium-ion battery, which uses a JST connector to plug right into the PSPi mainboard to power the console. And the last thing we'll be needing is of course our donor console. Now this mod is only compatible with 1000 model PSPs like this one here. It is not compatible with 2000, 3000, the PSP Go, or the E1000 model which was only released in Europe. Alright, so that's everything I'll be using to build the PSPi 6. But before we get into the installation, let's talk about the sponsor of today's video, iFixit. If you've been following the channel for a while, you've probably noticed that I consistently rely on my trusty iFixit ProTech Toolkit for most of my mod videos. iFixit is on a mission to empower retro tech enthusiasts and DIYers, helping us breathe new life into our consoles and other electronic devices. Recently, iFixit has celebrated Repair Day, reaffirming its unwavering commitment to repairing and maintaining existing devices, a vital step in curbing the proliferation of electronic waste worldwide. Although Repair Day has come and gone, iFixit's tireless dedication to advancing the Right to Repair initiative continues. The company actively supports this cause by offering essential tools and components needed to empower individuals to extend the lifespan of their electronics. So for all your electronic repairing needs, definitely check out iFixit using the link in the description below. And again, a huge thank you to iFixit for sponsoring this video. Alright, now let me go ahead and show you how to put together the PSPi 6. Alright, so not surprisingly, the first thing we need to do is take the PSP apart. We actually need to tear it down almost completely, removing the motherboard, and basically we need to get it down to the bare frame. You can follow along with my tutorial, and I'll chime in periodically during certain parts of the guide, which may have important details I think you should take note of. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the modding process. Now, when removing the UMD drive door, be very careful as the plastic hinge is quite delicate. You may want to wait to remove it until later on in the disassembly process, specifically after removing the metal midframe. Okay, we finally got everything out. Now we can go ahead and install our PSPi components, starting with the headphone board. Now, when installing the PSPi mainboard, you want to be cognizant of the Wi-Fi antenna. You want to route it behind the mainboard and into the UMD bay behind it as shown. Make sure that the antenna is fitted into this channel here, which will help ensure that it won't get pinched. And I have it routed to come into the UMD bay right above the JST connector for the battery. Hey everyone, Future Tito here. Now, one thing that I forgot to do is to insulate the Raspberry Pi I/O pinholes on the PSPi mainboard. When installing the Raspberry Pi, the header pins will protrude a bit, and there is a tiny risk that they can contact the metal frame and short out. Adding Kapton tape over the pinholes is a good preventative measure. Doing this prior to installing the mainboard will make this a whole lot easier, so you don't have to try and weave a piece of tape between the metal frame and the mainboard like I did. And here are where the holes are located for your reference. Anyway, back to the tutorial. Now here we have the analog stick contacts. You just want to make sure that they aren't contacting the metal frame before you fully mount it in. Alright, fantastic. We have a fully assembled PSPi, but now we need to install an OS, and in this case, it'll be RetroPie. To do that, we need to set the carrier board switch to USB. Then plug in the PSPi to the computer. Your PC won't recognize it at first, so you'll need to install an application called RPI Boot. After it installs, it should recognize the PSPi as a storage device. If it asks you to format the drive, just go ahead and click Cancel. Next, you'll need to install another application called Raspberry Pi Imager. Once you have this installed and opened, click and choose the OS button, and then scroll down to Use Custom. At this point, you'll navigate to select the custom RetroPi image that Adam has created, which at the moment isn't publicly available, but should be very soon. Once you have the image selected, press the Choose Storage button and select your Raspberry Pi device. Then, hit the right button and it will start to burn the image to the PSPi. This process can take quite a while, so just wait for it to complete. Now, do note that this is really just a top-level tutorial on how to get the RetroPi OS up and running on the PSPi. For the latest set of instructions, be sure to navigate to Adam's GitHub, which will have the latest and greatest information. Awesome. Once it's done, you can go ahead and skip the verification process, and then unplug the PSPi from your computer. Be sure to switch your PSPi back to SD storage, and now you're ready to load your ROMs and enjoy retro gaming on the go. Over the years, I've tried a few emulation handhelds and even built one, and while they're great, I always feel like they're a bit lacking in the looks department. But with the PSPi 6, I think I found a new favorite. Now granted, this isn't the most powerful emulation handheld out there, but it gives you access to more than enough consoles to keep you entertained. Oh, and did I mention, it looks great. Anyway, with the PSPi all put together, let's go over all of its features. Now, I won't be getting into the features of RetroPi, as that isn't the focus of this video. Rather, I'll be taking a look at the hardware and software features of the PSPi mod itself. Let's first take a look at the hardware, which, like I mentioned earlier, basically utilizes all the existing buttons and interfaces on the PSP. Starting with the Wi-Fi switch here, at the moment it doesn't do anything on my particular build of this kit, but it seems that Adam has already integrated a feature that allows you to place the console into performance mode or a low power mode to conserve battery by simply switching the slider. This is great as it'll help increase play sessions in between charges when you switch to low power mode, but of course you may have issues running more resource intensive games. And these two green LEDs indicate when the device has a Wi-Fi connection, as well as eMMC or SD card activity, which is exactly what they did for the original stock PSP. Now, moving our attention to the buttons along the bottom of the LCD, the home button doesn't do anything at the moment, but in the future it will allow you to exit games with a simple double press. The volume buttons do exactly as you'd expect and control the levels as indicated by the on-screen icon. And the brightness button controls, you guessed it, the brightness, of which there are 8 levels and it gets plenty bright. While I think using the original screen would have been very cool, this replacement screen greatly outperforms the original, and honestly it looks incredible. Now, this button with the music symbol mutes the system, which is a very convenient feature. It works for both the internal speakers as well as the headphones. And the last 2 buttons are Start and Select, which are your Start and Select buttons. Now what's great is while in a game, pressing both Start and Select at the same time will allow you to exit right back into RetroPi. This will most likely go away once the home button has been programmed to do that. And lastly, the slider here on the right side is for powering the unit on and off. For my particular build, you need to hold the slider down in order to power off the unit. However, in the latest firmware, you will be able to do a proper safe shutdown by just doing a quick slide of the switch. And placing it in the hold position will lock the controls and put the unit into a power saving mode. Again, my unit doesn't have this feature, but I do believe it is already programmed into the latest firmware. Now, as far as the software features go, like I just showcased, there are on-screen graphics for volume and brightness controls, as well as a battery level and mute indicator. These are just really polished features that, in my opinion, really tie the whole mod together. And as of right now, the PSPi supports RetroPi, which is what I'm showing here. Adam made a custom image of RetroPi for this mod, and it works great. But Adam will also be adding support for other operating systems, such as Ubuntu and Raspberry Pi OS, as well as other emulation front ends like Bodhesera. It's pretty amazing just how much flexibility Adam is putting into this project. Adam's custom RetroPi image supports quite a few emulators, with the upper end of support being the original PlayStation and Nintendo 64. He's also working on adding a PSP emulator in the near future. Here's some footage of gameplay on a few of the emulators, but feel free to skip ahead if you want. Now, the last feature I want to talk about is the USB mini port on top. Now, I know a lot of you would have loved to have a USB-C port there, but honestly, I think Adam hit the nail on the head by going with the original USB mini port, and I'll tell you why. First, it doesn't require any modification to fit, and second, it keeps all the original aesthetics of the PSP. Now, the USB port is only used for charging the console, which can also be done with the barrel jack on the bottom of the unit. Overall, with Adam's efforts, this kit seamlessly turns the PSP into a fantastic little emulation handheld using all of the console's original inputs, which is simply awesome. And as Adam works to increase the compatibility of the PSPi interface board with other compute modules, like the recently released CM4, I'm sure we'll be able to see increased compatibility with more resource-intensive emulators. Great. Now that we went over all the PSPi's features, let's talk about the pros and cons of this project. Starting with the pros, I first and foremost love the decision to use the PSP as the foundation of this mod. It's easily one of the best looking consoles out there, and it has a decent set of buttons to work well with a bunch of emulators. Next, this mod is actually very simple to do. Adam has essentially made this a nearly drop-in project that you can do in about an hour. There is no soldering or shell modification required. All you need is a screwdriver, perhaps a pry tool, and some patience. Which brings me to the next pro. Because there are no physical modifications required for the shell due to Adam's fantastic design and attention to detail, this mod is completely reversible. If you ever want your stock PSP back, you can always revert it back to its original state, which I absolutely love. Additionally, Adam has made this project completely open source, so those in the community that want to contribute can, and also this helps ensure that the project is never lost. And the last pro is a pretty big one. The way Adam has designed this mod allows it to be upgradable in the future. In a way, this is kind of a future-proof mod in that whenever there is a new compute module released, all that needs to be updated is the carrier board. To me, this is really exciting, especially since we just got the new CM5 which came out not too long ago. Having this project be updatable is huge, and I think Adam has really knocked it out of the park with this scary good mod. Anyway, those are really all the pros I could think of. So now, let's get into the cons. And to be completely honest, I can't think of any cons for this project. The only issue that I ran into was not the fault of the mod, but my decision to go with the CM4 with an internal eMMC memory. Because I used eMMC internal storage instead of an SD card, I am limited to the amount of storage on the Raspberry Pi. After putting a few PlayStation games on this thing, my storage was maxed out. So this isn't really a con, but a recommendation to perhaps go with a CM4 module that doesn't have eMMC storage on board. That way you can utilize the SD card reader on the carrier board and have way more storage for all your ROMs. Now, if you want to pick up a PSPi for yourself, Adam has set up a web store which I have linked down below. You should have several versions of the kit with varying levels of completeness, from just the basic board with no components, all the way to fully built boards that are simply drop in and ready to go. And because this is an open source project, you can of course source all the parts on your own, but I think if you can, it's great to support the creators of these projects. Adam's store is currently being worked on and should be fully up and running in the December timeframe, just in time for the holidays. Now before I wrap this video up, I want to hand it back over to Adam to give us a little more about what he has in store for us in the future.
At the moment, I'm still completely immersed in this project. I'm taking my time on it and laying down what I think is going to be a strong foundation, because I'm pretty sure this one's going to appeal to a lot of people, especially since there's no soldering required on it. I have most of the hardware worked out, and I'm putting the finishing touches on the firmware and the drivers. I already have the battery indicator, volume and brightness controls, and some power saving features added, and next I'm working on adding sleep mode, Wi-Fi control, and code for an extra joystick and some extra buttons. And once the board's actually out, expect me to be fully in testing and shipping mode for at least the next few months. And once that settles down, I'll probably spend some time working on the Raspberry Pi alternatives to get them working in this board. And maybe I'll even revisit some of my other projects that have been on the back burner for a while. So that's a sneak peek into what's coming. So thanks again, Tito, for having me on, and I look forward to hearing what people think.
Awesome, sounds great, Adam. Really looking forward to what you have in store, and I'll definitely be following you to stay up to date on your projects. In the meantime, if you all want to keep tabs on Adam, I left a link to all the places that you can find him on the internet down below. Well folks, there you have it, the PSPi 6, my new favorite way to enjoy retro gaming on the go. Now if you enjoyed this video, I really think you'll like this one here. So check it out. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Have a happy and safe Halloween, and I'll see you all next Thursday.